do you have for new coaches with discomfort during coaching sessions?
Just keep going, just keep coaching. It's a stage, and that stage doesn't last that long if you keep coaching sessions. There were times when I was early in my coaching career, I was just highly uncomfortable with the coaching. I knew coaching was really valuable and good because I was a client, and I knew how much I, as a client, was getting out of the coaching session. So I think if you are coaching other people, it's helpful to have your own, to be a client as well. And if you don't want to spend money on it because you're trying to make it as a business, and I was there too, I would do round robin exchanges with people and say, person A coaches person B, coaches person C. You figure out something like that so you get coached so you can feel the value of it. It's helpful to be able to have that experience, so you're not wrestling with where the value of coaching is coming from, because that's what that's what I was trying to do, was trying to prove the value of coaching, prove my choice was correct in choosing to become a coach, and try to logically just demonstrate value for coaching sessions that I was trying to do with people. And I stopped that pretty quickly. So my other thought on it is enjoy that step, because that step doesn't last very long. If you keep coaching, it will fade, and you might look back at nostalgia on your first steps as a coach.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
I mean, discomfort isn't all bad though, is it? I mean, if I think about, I still feel discomfort before I'm going to present or I'm going on to do certain things. Still certain clients that I've had, that are new clients in corporations, where I get those butterflies in my stomach, or a little bit of that feeling. And, I'll be asking myself, like, I remember asking my coach who I was working with, and I was like, why am I still feeling like this? I've been doing this for years. I've done this so many times. Where is this coming from? And I won't use the language, or my coach can use colorful language sometimes. But, she was like, what is the benefit of that feeling to you? And for me, it keeps me on my toes a little bit.
I actively seek after that feeling again. Like I try to go after it. I don't feel it anymore when I coach people. I don't even feel it anymore when I coach people in front of a classroom of people on Zoom. I really feel it even when I'm coaching people in front of a big audience. I still don't feel that. Only if the coaching is going really bad, or if my client is. There was a talk at NYU I gave. This is before right before, like October before the pandemic, and I was there, and my client, it was just going bad. Like the first 10 minutes were pure, just everyone was looking at us. There were maybe 150 people there. It was a really big room with huge columns. Like the room setup was a little wonky too, because there were people who were had to move behind peers to try to see us. It just was the whole thing was just a complete mess. And she was being coached around, I think, a Halloween costume or something. And it was just not good. And then about 10 minutes into it, there was a part of me that was so uncomfortable, but that was also enjoying the challenge of it and bringing myself back to that space. And sure enough, it breaks open. She said something, and there's an opening, and then the coaching becomes this amazing thing, and we have it on film, and it's like mind blowing. And I remember that feeling of, oh my goodness, I'm in it. Like, what if this goes bad and I have to spend another 5 hours with these people and have to really work to get them back on my side? Like, this is going to be, like, welcome to New York. can you do this lift for 4 hours? 150 people, like, people might start walking out at a certain time. Like, that's what I was thinking in my mind. And I mean, pulled it out. It was wild. It really was. Um, so I think, it those first coaching sessions, I was bad. There's no way around it. I just was a bad coach when I first started. It took me a little while to figure it out. What I'm really happy with the current state of the training is I feel like I learned from the gaps that I had as a coach, and some of them are, if you set the agenda really, really, if you set a strong agenda at the beginning of a session, that helps. Uh, if you have, you can stay in curiosity. If you different default questions, like what are you learning about yourself? Uh, Learning questions help. Putting it back on them help. I feel like the training, I've tried as hard as I could to help people avoid the pitfalls that I fell into. And a lot of the feedback that we get from coaches who take our training and go out into the world is that, yeah, this is good. They might go to other training programs for like health board, or before we had the health board certified, and they'd come back and say, yeah, like people who are in my training asked me, where did I get my training from? Because the Training EDU coaches are strong, and I'm really proud of that, really, truly. And I think there's such a trust in the process when you can see it, and see other people experience the same success too as coaches. You hear it in their calls or when they give workshops or presentations, like, this stuff works, and you trust it. I mean, you're an example as well, Raj, of I mean, what you're doing with your speaking and all of it. It's yeah, it's in the space.
I agree with you, John. It's that trust, isn't it? It's remembering the three trusts. It's remembering to trust yourself. And I think just some tips I would give new coaches as somebody who can still feel discomfort. I was attempting not to coach myself in my mind, because I was like, oh, maybe that discomfort is part of who I am and my values and what we just talked about earlier, because I care so much about wanting to make an impact. So, a tip I would give, and I do this myself, is if discomfort showed up during a session, whatever that kind of session might be, I'll journal afterwards in terms of what was coming up for me, what was showing up, what other work would I like to do on myself, or why was the inner critic so active in that moment. So I think there's a few things to think about as well, in terms of what is that discomfort? Is the discomfort over your own perfectionism? Is it over value add? One thing I want to share is sometimes I've heard coaches share discomfort with a topic that has come up.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what is it that triggered you about that topic? Or like, what assumption or judgment came up for you? What inner work still remains to be done? So there's like that piece. And then for me, it's really important, John, that before I go into a coaching session or any kind of session, I'm very intentional. So I would say to coaches, give yourself 5-10 minutes. Don't be going back to back from session to session, especially when you're new. Give yourself a few minutes, do whatever prep. If you want some mini guidance for yourself, sometimes I know coaches are writing TIME down on a piece of paper just as a reminder. Yeah, you want to be present, but I think, how do you give yourself a minute just to be mindful? Leave yourself at the door, as you said, and be there and present for your client.
Mm-hmm. Things I've seen help coaches at the beginning is having a list of powerful questions, just a one page, just review it, not necessarily. Um, you don't have to read them like to your client, but I heard a coach do that once. I was listening to an overview, and it was one of the oddest overviews I've ever listened to. And then it took me about 5-10 minutes to figure out what was happening. And they were going through a workbook, asking whatever question was next, without any regard for what the client just said. It was amazing. It was, I felt like it was art. It was like coaching art in a way. It wasn't bad. It worked kind of, and that is just, once I figured out what was happening, I went through stages of shock, horror, and then utter fascination. And are you kidding me? Let's listen to this, because this is amazing. Um,
That would be a good quiz to do. I remember we did that in the
it was amazing.
2.0 with you, John, once.
It
You were
was
just,
amazing.
we're picking random questions.
Right.
And not that we're telling you to do this, but it was a good experiment, wasn't it? To
Mm-hmm.
actually see what happened.
Right. Right. And my main takeaway on this, and when I listen to coaches struggling, is usually because the coach is trying to do too much. It's not because the coach is trying to do too little. And you really can you really as a new coach, you really can trust that your client knows the value they need to get out of a session. They just need processing space. Like, we as human beings, we just need space to process. And so much value in the coaching comes from just sitting back and listening. That's enough. That is so enough. Uh, and when people do that, you can almost feel it's like the quality of the space changes. I'm convinced that we'll be able to measure this. 1,000 years from now, we will be able to measure emotional love energy, just like we can measure electricity. And maybe it's like mirror neurons or whatever, but there will be some measurement that we will have that will be able to do this. And because you can feel it. You can feel when someone's truly listening to you, or when they're or if they're listening to themselves listen to you. There's a difference.
So, is there any one or two back pocket questions you think coaches should have?
My trademark question is, what are you learning about yourself? Or what is the situation? If this situation were designed to teach you something, what would it be? I think I ask it almost every session. I'm realizing that when I'm making these demos. Use it. It's good.
Yeah.
What about
You can't go
Mark?
wrong with it.
Yeah. What about you?
I think a tip that I would share is often when obviously assessing lots of coaches like yourself, I can hear new coaches wanting to go to the doing too soon or focus on the problem. And I would say catch yourself in that moment and ask a learning question, like hand it back to your coachee or the client versus asking that doing question. And yeah, my go-to, what are you learning about yourself right now? Or what awareness just took place? I like to mix it up a bit as well so that they're not just, kinesthetic feeling questions. It might be a visual one or an auditory one. What does it sound like or what are you hearing when you're saying that out loud? There's like an auditory question there because people respond differently. Not everyone's highly kinesthetic or highly visual, are they? So I like to mix it up, but it's the essence of the question is the same. And we're on time. I don't know how we got to time.
We are, and I have a coaching session. I'm going to go right to a coaching session now for a demo. I'm creating a demo library of coaching that maybe we'll bring some snippets in. Right? I'd love to hear. Part of me wonders, do I still have it? Like I know I've been training people but I used to coach 40 hours a week, a ton of coaching, and then I did lots of training, and now I really only coach on maybe 3 hours a week if I'm lucky. So I don't know. I feel like it's interesting to get back in it after doing all this research and really feeling the absolute utter joy in being able to release all ideas of you and just get really curious about someone else. It's a privilege. It's a joy. It's work. It's play. It's all of it. I feel really jazzed by it. So